The boy lay still on the table, cold skin, silent chest, no heartbeat beneath the doctor's trembling fingers. Yet in that quiet Boston hospital, lit only by oil lamps and the grit of mid-19th century medicine, a sound rose from the lifeless body. A voice, a boy's voice, steady, clear, impossibly calm. Dr. Samuel Morrison froze. Every man in the room felt the same electric terror cut through him, as if they had all stepped too close to a boundary never meant to be crossed. The boy, Daniel Frost, was dead clinically, completely, undeniably dead. And still, he spoke. For 43 minutes, the dead child described events yet to happen, patients yet to arrive, and disasters yet to unfold across the city. Every word documented, every prediction fulfilled. What does a man do when death breaks its rules? And what if the one speaking from beyond that threshold isn't a ghost, but a living consciousness refusing to let go? This is the story that forced Boston's greatest doctors to confront a truth they were never trained to face. Before we dive deeper into this forgotten medical mystery, take a second, right now to hit subscribe. We're building a community of curious minds who don't just watch history, they interrogate it. If stories like this spark something in you, that subtle what if, then tap the notification bell. Not for the algorithm, for yourself, because the next documented anomaly from the archives might be the one that keeps you up tonight. The rain hammered against the old iron roof as Marius Elwood stepped into the derelict ward, each drop echoing like distant footsteps chasing him through decades of secrets that no living man had ever fully understood. His lantern cut through the dust-choked air, revealing abandoned cots and rusted rails, relics of a forgotten facility where his mentor once worked and where whispers claimed reality had fractured around one unnamed boy. Marius felt the temperature shift instantly, a cold thread sliding across his spine, as though something unseen had been waiting all these years to greet the return of another breathing man. He clutched the leather satchel hanging at his side, its contents rattling softly: old medical notes, forbidden transcripts, and a single brass key his mentor had pressed into his hand before dying. The smell of aged disinfectant lingered in the air, blending with the metallic scent of wet iron, creating a haunting mixture that suggested the place had preserved every memory against its will. A faint hum vibrated beneath the floorboards, subtle yet intentional, like a man quietly clearing his throat in the dark to signal he was still present. Marius's boots left shallow impressions in the dust, disturbing years of untouched silence and awakening fragments of the past, each step nudging the building's dormant awareness to life. He reached the central ward door, its window fogged from within, though no breath should have existed on the other side, its surface pulsing faintly with something that felt too deliberate. The brass key fit perfectly into the old lock, clicking with a sound sharper than expected, as though the mechanism recognized the bloodline of the man who had last touched it. The door creaked open, releasing a dense wave of cold that rolled across Marius's body, settling against his ribs like the lingering presence of another heartbeat not his own. Lantern light revealed a single operating table centered under a cracked skylight, its surface immaculate despite the ruins surrounding it, as if the table alone refused to surrender to time. Beside the table stood a tall glass cylinder, emptied long ago yet humming faintly, like a chest still trying to breathe through the memory of a man it once contained. Marius approached cautiously, recognizing the machine from his mentor's band notes, an experimental life support vessel designed before its time by men who never understood what they had built. His fingers brushed the cold glass, and a jolt of sensation flashed through him, brief, sharp, familiar, as though someone else's recollection had surged up his arm and into his mind. A voice echoed softly across the room, not spoken aloud but rising inside his thoughts, shaped like a man whispering from behind a wall too thin to exist. Marius steadied himself, breath thinning as the voice grew clearer, its tone steady, patient, as though it had expected him and rehearsed the moment endlessly. He glanced around the room, searching for any rational source, yet every shadow remained still, every corner empty, offering no explanation for the mind-deep resonance calling his name. The voice guided his attention toward a drawer beneath the operating table, its metal handle glinting as though recently touched by a warm human hand. Inside the drawer lay a single case file, pristine and recently placed, despite dust settling on everything else, the cover embossed with a man's name he had never heard. He opened the file gently, recognizing the handwriting at once his mentor's, but the dates written inside stretched decades beyond the man's death, each entry describing future events with lethal precision. Sweat gathered at Marius's temples as he flipped through the pages, realizing each prediction aligned with disasters he had witnessed firsthand, events no dead man should have recorded. The final entry described Marius himself, detailing the exact moment he would enter this ward, the exact breath he would take, and the exact fear rising inside his chest now. A tremor shuddered through the building as if responding to his discovery, rafters groaning gently like an enormous rib cage inhaling for the first time in years. The lantern flickered violently, stretching the shadows across the walls until they resembled towering male silhouettes watching him with patient curiosity and unspoken intent. Marius felt the pressure of unseen eyes all around him, as though the room housed more men than he could see, each presence waiting for him to recognize his purpose. The voice inside his thoughts strengthened, forming full sentences now, calm and instructive, guiding him toward a sealed panel at the far end of the room. He pressed his hand against the panel, and it slid open effortlessly, revealing a narrow stairwell descending into darkness that breathed like a living man in deep slumber. A breeze rose from below, cool and strangely rhythmic, pulsing in waves that matched no machine but beat like a distant heart searching for resonance. Marius tightened his grip on the lantern and began his descent, drawn by the unwavering presence calling him forward, a presence that felt undeniably human yet unmistakably transformed. At the base of the stairs, he found another door, glowing faintly from within, its aura pulsing like the slow exhale of a man returning from the edge of silence. He reached for the handle, breath steadying, knowing that whatever waited behind that door had been expecting him long before he was ever born into this world. The metal handle felt warm beneath Lucien Ward's fingers, as though a living pulse throbbed on the other side, each slow rhythm echoing the presence of a man who hadn't breathed air in decades yet refused to disappear. A deep vibration rolled through the floor as he pushed the door open, lantern light spilling into a chamber lined with cables, vents, and steel ribs that curved overhead like the chest cavity of some colossal male figure. The air tasted metallic and strangely fresh, as if the room inhaled through unseen lungs, exhaling a faint mist that drifted past Lucien's cheeks with the gentleness of a hand brushing old memories awake. Rows of cylindrical pods lined the walls, their glass surfaces fogged from within, each container humming with a slow cadence that felt disturbingly similar to human breathing trapped behind a barrier of steel. Lucien stepped forward carefully, boots tapping the grate floor as a ripple passed through the chamber, lights flickering in synchronized pulses like a heartbeat learning to match his presence. He paused beside the nearest pod, noticing a silhouette inside a tall man standing upright, head lowered, chest unmoving yet radiating a residual heat that suggested life suspended rather than extinguished. The glass fog cleared slightly as Lucien exhaled near it, revealing the man's closed eyes and still features, expression calm as though sleeping beneath the surface of reality itself. A soft crackling sound drifted from the overhead speakers, then a voice emerged low, composed, unmistakably male addressing him with familiarity he couldn't logically possess. Lucien Ward, the voice murmured, its tone smooth yet weighty, as if layered with countless echoes of the same man speaking across different years. Lucien's pulse kicked hard as he scanned the chamber, unsure whether the voice belonged to one of the preserved men or something deeper woven through the architecture of the facility itself. The voice guided him toward the central control console, dust swept clean from its surface despite decades of abandonment, as though a pair of invisible hands maintained it deliberately. He lifted a journal resting beside the controls, recognizing the handwriting instantly it matched the script found in his father's old notes, firm strokes shaped by a man who wrote with unwavering precision. Inside were diagrams of the pods, equations that mapped consciousness like circuitry, and a final entry describing a protocol designed to preserve a man's mind beyond the collapse of his physical form. Lucien's throat tightened as he read the last line. If my son enters the chamber, initiate awakening, he must see what we have become. The chamber lights surged, each pod flickering as dormant systems roared to life, steam venting through overhead pipes like the exhalations of giants rising from centuries of rest. One pod hissed sharply, its interior shifting as the silhouette inside straightened. Shoulders expanding slightly, posture awakening with unnatural precision and slow, deliberate intent. Lucien took a step back, instincts flooding him with warning, though another part of him, something inherited, something coded into him, urged him to stay. The pod door cracked open, releasing a wave of warm air that washed over Lucien with the strange comfort of a familiar embrace from a man he could not remember. The figure stepped out, movements smooth and controlled, face illuminated by the lantern's trembling glow, revealing sharp features identical to the photographs Lucien kept of his father. But this man was taller, posture stronger, expression calmer, like a perfected version, a reconstruction designed by science that dared to defy the boundaries of mortality. Lucien's breath faltered as the man's eyes opened, irises glowing faintly with an inner luminescence that pulsed like stored memories seeking a living host. "Father," Lucien whispered, though the word tasted foreign, as if spoken by a child he no longer remembered being, and directed at a man who existed beyond natural definitions. The reconstructed man stepped closer, resting a hand on Lucien's shoulder with a warmth that felt authentically human, though its steadiness suggested something enhanced. "You were meant to finish what I began," the man said softly, voice resonating with layered tones, blending familiarity with the depth of many merged consciousnesses. Lucien felt the chamber respond to their contact, lights pulsing in waves, machinery rumbling beneath the floor as though acknowledging a long-awaited reunion. A distant alarm echoed through the vents, not warning of danger but signaling activation, machinery waking, systems linking, reality shifting to accommodate the presence of two men bonded by legacy. The reconstructed father guided Lucien toward another pod, its surface glowing as though anticipating its next occupant, the air trembling with a sense of inevitable transformation. Lucien hesitated, breath sharp, knowing the decision he made here would alter not only his fate but the future shaped by the men who had preserved themselves in defiance of mortality. The chamber dimmed suddenly, lantern flickering as power rerouted through hidden channels, illuminating the final message engraved on the pod's control panel: "To continue our line, step inside." The reconstructed father nodded once, a simple gesture carrying generations of intent, urging Lucien to confront the destiny engineered by a legacy of men who refused to vanish into silence. Lucien touched the pod's surface, electric warmth blooming beneath his fingertips, and the chamber inhaled deeply around him, waiting for the moment he would step inside and awaken what slept within. The pod's glow intensified as Aldric Marek stepped into the corridor, summoned by the subtle tremor in the walls, each vibration carrying the unmistakable resonance of men awakening from engineered stillness deep below. He tightened his grip on the lantern, its flame bending under shifting air currents that moved with intention, as though unseen figures paced beside him, tracking his progress toward the chamber where legacies rewrote themselves. Aldric's boots scraped gently across the metallic floor, every sound amplified by the emptiness, forming rhythmic echoes that mimicked an approaching footstep pattern he recognized from long-dead mentors. His breath clouded in the chilled air, drifting between the steel arches overhead, each arch curving like the ribs of a dormant titan sculpted by men who had abandoned natural mortality. He passed a row of shuttered doors, each marked with a different insignia, representing divisions of a brotherhood dedicated to preserving consciousness through methods so advanced they bordered on forbiddance. The final door ahead pulsed faintly, releasing a low hum that called to him with a familiar warmth, the kind carried in a father's voice spoken through memory rather than breath. Aldric reached the panel, feeling the metallic surface vibrate beneath his fingertips, as though an unseen hand pressed from the opposite side with matching determination. The door slid open with a resonant chime, revealing a circular chamber lit by layered blue luminescence, each pulse aligning with the heartbeat Aldric felt accelerating inside his chest. At the center stood a towering cylindrical apparatus, surrounded by data pillars that displayed faint silhouettes of men whose minds remained archived inside crystalline structures. A voice rose from the apparatus, low and steady, carrying the tone of a man whose authority persisted long beyond the decline of his physical form. "Aldric Marek," it said, shaping the syllables with perfect clarity, as if the speaker stood beside him rather than suspended in digital lineage. The figure materialized through swirling holographic particles, forming a tall man with sharp features and composed eyes, resembling Aldric's father in both confidence and bearing. Aldric exhaled sharply, feeling the exact moment recognition struck him, flooding his body with the warmth of a connection he thought he had lost forever. The projection stepped closer, its digital form radiating a subtle heat, suggesting it was more than coded imagery, something partially reclaimed from stored neural essence. "I remain," the figure stated calmly, voice layered with undertones belonging to multiple archived men, each contributing fragments of wisdom and preserved identity. Aldric's fingers trembled as he reached out, meeting the projection's outstretched hand, feeling a tingling warmth, as though memory itself carried physical texture. "You were summoned because the Foundation weakens," the voice continued, each word shaped by logical precision and paternal resonance that grounded Aldric more effectively than sunlight. A nearby pillar flickered, revealing stored visions of past men walking through the chamber, each one contributing to the collective knowledge sustaining the archive's existence. Aldric watched their movements, purposeful, deliberate, each man guiding the next generation through trials that redefined the boundaries of consciousness and engineered mortality. The projection gestured toward a secondary console, its screen displaying Aldric's name and encoded markers that pulsed in synchronization with the signature rhythm of his heartbeat. "You will reinforce the line," the voice said, neither commanding nor pleading, simply stating a truth designed long before Aldric first opened his eyes to the world. A pressure shift rippled through the chamber as the outer machinery engaged, releasing steady waves of warm air that carried traces of biological potential. Aldric stepped forward, feeling the air wrap around him like an invitation, the heat resonating deeply with the fragmented memories inherited through generations of engineered lineage. The projection raised its hand, transferring a stream of data that glimmered like liquid silver, flowing across Aldric's chest and settling into the rhythm of his pulse. Aldric gasped as visions erupted, men operating complex machinery, entering chambers of suspended existence, building a continuum meant to transcend organic boundaries. He staggered but remained upright, driven by a sense of duty encoded in his very marrow, compelling him to complete the mission left unfinished by men preserved in silence. The projection's outline wavered, flickering as old systems strained against their age, yet it maintained enough stability to guide Aldric toward the central control throne. Aldric approached the throne, shaped from reinforced alloy and memory-linked neural conduits designed for a man willing to merge with the lineage he represented. As he lowered himself onto the seat, the chamber tightened around him, systems aligning with his breathing, forming a synchronized pattern resembling a choir of unseen male voices. The machinery activated fully, sealing Aldric into the continuum with a deep resonant hum, marking the moment another man joined the silent inheritance shaping the future. The hum beneath the fortress deepened as Corvin Dahl descended the final staircase, each metal step vibrating with the weight of countless men whose preserved thoughts echoed faintly through every reinforced strut. His lantern cast fractured light along the subterranean passage, revealing walls etched with the names of men who had vanished into the system willingly, their identities interwoven into the cathedral-like machinery below. A cold current drifted past him, carrying the unmistakable sensation of breath, slow, measured, distinctly human, though no living man besides Corvin occupied the endless corridor. He approached the massive chamber door ahead, its circular structure sealed by interlocking gears sculpted with the precision of minds determined to overcome mortality's limitations. The door recognized his presence instantly, releasing a deep metallic sigh, as if opening its threshold restored a ritual long abandoned yet never forgotten by the men who designed it. Inside, rows of towering capsules lined the walls in perfect symmetry, each containing the upright silhouette of a man suspended within shimmering fluid that pulsed with faint luminescence. Corvin stepped forward cautiously, feeling the chamber awaken around him, as though every sleeping figure sensed the arrival of a new bearer of their shared legacy. The air thickened with subtle pressure, vibrating softly like the chest of a massive being exhaling beneath the floor, each tremor merging with the rhythmic hum of the preservation engines. A single capsule at the center released a whisper of steam, its occupant stirring as though rising from centuries of dreamless slumber to acknowledge Corvin's presence. The man's eyes opened within the fluid, calm, sharp, unnervingly alert, studying Corvin with recognition that exceeded logic, as if memories from multiple lifetimes flowed through his gaze. A voice echoed across the chamber, resonant and impossibly human, though unfiltered by lungs or vocal cords, shaped instead by stored consciousness woven into the environment. Corvin Dahl, the voice intoned, carrying the weight of men speaking in perfect unison, creating a harmony of identities fused through engineered immortality. Corvin stood still, heart hammering against his ribs, realizing he had entered the core of the preservation order, where the oldest members lingered in ageless equilibrium. The central capsule unlocked with a low hiss, its fluid draining with mechanical grace, allowing the preserved man within to step forward onto the metallic platform. Steam rose around him as he inhaled sharply, reclaiming breath with the confidence of a man who remembered every lifetime he had lived before entering the chamber. Corvin recognized him immediately. Varian Keshan, the architect of the system, long believed lost yet preserved in a state poised between existence and memory. Varian approached with controlled steps, each movement steady and deliberate, as though guided by instinct crafted from centuries of accumulated knowledge. He spoke with a voice layered from countless integrated echoes, yet grounded enough to feel distinctly his own, resonating with authority shaped by purpose rather than dominance. "You have reached the threshold," Varian said, his tone calm and measured, carrying the certainty of a man who had waited decades for this exact moment. Corvin felt an unseen force gather behind him, the presence of archived men awakening to witness the continuation of the lineage they had built beyond natural decay. The chamber lights brightened, illuminating data streams flowing across the walls like veins pulsing with preserved intellect, forming a silent network of interconnected male minds. Varian lifted his hand toward the nearest conduit, triggering a cascade of activated systems that bathed the room in shifting patterns resembling neural firing. Corvin sensed the chamber reacting to him specifically, shaping the environment to accommodate the genetic markers and inherited traits that defined his link to the ancient order. Each sleeping figure within the capsule stirred, not awakening fully but responding with subtle shifts, acknowledging Corvin as the designated successor to their collective legacy. Varian gestured toward a central platform, its surface carved with intricate lines representing the pathways of preserved consciousness waiting to merge with Corvin's own. Corvin stepped onto it, feeling warmth rise through his boots, traveling up his spine until it reached the base of his skull with the pressure of countless remembered experiences. The platform expanded its mechanical arms, linking gently to Corvin's temples and chest, forming a connection that resonated like a heartbeat within a heartbeat. Varian placed his hand on Corvin's shoulder, a firm and grounding gesture carrying the strength of men who had shaped the continuum long before Corvin's birth. "Your role begins now," Varian said quietly, his voice unwavering, as preserved minds aligned in anticipation of their next successor. The chamber hummed with powerful rhythm, each pulse a declaration of unity among men who refused to vanish into silence, choosing instead to forge an unbroken continuum. Corvin closed his eyes as the transfer began, feeling generations of male consciousness flow into him steady, measured, guiding, preparing him to join the order that lived beyond existence itself. The chamber dimmed, the system stabilizing around its newest sentinel, as the silent men watched through preserved memory, awaiting the world Corvin would soon reshape.